And looks like it's coming in on YouTube. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our bi-weekly live stream. There we go. And in Zeke there. Welcome to our bi-weekly live stream. My name is Drew Etzel, and today, I said Zeke. Today we have Alex, not Zeke. Here with us today. And let's get the show on the road here. Thank you for coming to our live stream. So what are we going to be doing today? So first off, you're going to have to listen to me, and I'm going to go through some slides and talk about what exactly is Crogl. And then I'm going to hand the reins over to Alec, and he is going to give us a demo of Crogl. And then we're going to hand the reins over to you for a Q&A session. So you are more than welcome to ask us any questions through the chat as needed. So moving right along here. So what exactly is Crogl? Crogl is AI for enterprise security. Crogl is designed around the new era of threats. So we're seeing that tickets and alert volumes are growing 20% year over year. Something like only 38% of alerts are actually getting triaged in your average SOC. And thanks to AI, open source AI models and AI in general, the cost is driven way down to actually start to facilitate attacks. So never mind government sponsored AI backed attacks. Even script kiddies now can have AI on their side. So it can get even worse and even more crazy out there. And then, there's just not enough people to staff all the SOCs. That is, that's the reality of it. So that's this is the environment that we've built Crogl in. And so now let me tell you exactly what Crogl is. So some of the key features of Crogl are, and one of the number one key feature is run anywhere. Crogl will run on-prem. Crogl will run air-gapped. It'll run in your cloud, private cloud, public cloud, you name it. It's 2 executables and container agent containers. That is all Crogl is. You own the software. It's not a SaaS in any way, shape, or form. The other key feature is any data, any schema. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but Crogl does not require you to normalize your data. You don't have to shove all of your data into yet another data lake and then take six to 9 months just to get your data, normalized before you can start to run Crogl. You stand up Crogl, you connect it to your data lakes, you connect it to your SIM, your ticketing system, and away you go. So it handles. It builds its own internal connections to actually to map all of the different schemas across all of your different lakes and tools. Crogl is continuously learning. It automatically updates. It automatically updates. Plus, it also has skills. The thing we called skills. Alec will be talking about that a little bit later. You can then continuously update and push out your skills. So the skills are a way to help train Crogl to work within your very weird. Every SOC is weird in its own different way. Skills allow you to set that up, and you can continuously update and push those out. And then like I said, Crogl is 100% private. It will work with your own private in-house LLM if you want. It will work with the public frontier models. Your data never leaves your systems. Your data stays within your system, so you never have to worry about it going out onto some SaaS, into some public model if you don't want to work with that. So the way Crogl is deployed here, the 3 main moving parts to Crogl. The first one is the knowledge graph, and that's what I was talking about just before. The knowledge graph is how Crogl is able to work with your data as is. Because, if you've got a Splunk SIM, and then you've got, a Databricks data lake, you might have very different fields in there, the same field, but it has very different names. Krogl's knowledge graph is going to map those fields automatically. So, it's source IP, SRC underscore IP on Splunk, and it's just IP maybe in your data lake. So Krogl's going to be making those matches automatically for you, and it's going to be constantly updating its knowledge graph. So if your schemas change, if your schemas evolve, Crogl will evolve along with it. So that's kind of the back end part of Crogl. This is the patented part of Crogl, the knowledge graph, and it is purely deterministic. It does not use your AI to build this knowledge graph. So it is all part. That's kind of the heart and soul of Crogl. And then the uses for Crogl, you use it to like a SOC agent. So they're going to investigate. They're going to work their way through queues. Then Crogl is going to document and recommend. But one of the key things we always say at Crogl is Crogl provides all of the information. It goes out and does all of the dirty work. It searches Splunk, it searches in your data lake, it searches in your endpoint, your endpoint protection. It brings all of that data back together in one central place, presents it to you, makes a recommendation. But in the end, it's the human agent that's going to read that recommendation and make that decision based on what their particular gut and what Crogl says. So, and then of course, Crogl hooks up to all of your, we use Splunk, Cribble, Databricks, all of your different tools and lakes. It works with all of your different workflows, Jira, ServiceNow. It has built-in connectors. You can also build your own connectors, as long as your tool has some kind of API, some kind of way of being communicated with, or even an MCP server. Crogl can then communicate with it. And then, like I said, Crogl works with all different kinds of LLMs, the big frontier models, of course, but even in-house and private LLMs, because obviously, if you're going to be running air-gapped, you're going to be running your own internal LLM. So Crogl has no problem with that as well. So what we're seeing with Crogl is 10 times faster investigations. More people are actually working their way through their queues. 5-time investigation depth with full MITRE ATT&CK processing all throughout. So we're seeing a lot of happy customers, a lot less stressed SOC analysts. So that is the end result of adopting Crogl. So that's my spiel. I want to turn things over to the demo. I know slides, nobody wants slides. Everybody's here for the demo. But before I turn it over to Alec and the demo, I do want to give a shout out there to our Crogl community. We have a Crogl Slack community. You're welcome to join. It's not just for Crogl customers, it's for security practitioners. We're trying to build an actual place where people can come to have real discussions about the SOC and about what's going on with their particular security work. So please come and sign up for the Crogl community. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Alec. Would you like to share your screen, Alec?
Yeah, before we hop into the demo here, Drew, if you would back up a couple slides to the Crogl architecture, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit more about the knowledge graph and what we're doing behind the scenes in regards to that, and the benefit that it can bring to customers and why we built the knowledge graph from that perspective. As you're going through and you're working with AI and you're deploying AI out into the environment, the biggest challenge that customers have, and I myself kind of backing up to give a bit of my background, I've been a SOC operator engineer in the Cyber Fusion Center for 15 years, and there's always been this struggle across all of the different security tools. You have your Splunks, your Databricks, your Elastics, and those function as data stores and where you're pumping all of your security telemetry to from all of the different data points, endpoints around the environment. But as we've gone through this journey in the last decade, everybody's been waiting for a unified schema. We've seen OCSF, we've seen multiple attempts at Ceph, SIM, whatever you want to have for your unified schema, and that's always been a difficulty that companies like Cribble and Databon and all of these other companies have come in to try to solve the issue of bringing a unified schema into the store of telemetry. But not everybody's gotten to that journey, and it's not an easy journey to go on to start to unify your telemetry. So that's why we built the knowledge graph, is to solve the issue of all of these different schemas that exist. And kind of as you alluded to, you have your Palo Altos and it's SRC underscore IP, or you have your Cisco firewalls and they're just, IP or IP underscore ADDR. These are all different relational values that might exist in your indexes where you're pumping your security data to. And that can be really, really difficult for an LLM to navigate that landscape as you're trying to run security investigations. So by introducing the knowledge graph into the harness layer where you're plugging the LLM into, that allows us to provide an overlay and instruction set, which is very, very succinct in telling your opuses, your GPTs, your gemmas, exactly how to work with that data and where that data lives and how the data is relational to other indexes, other tables you might have in your data stores. And that goes beyond just data stores as well. As you're working in a variety of these different tools, plugging it in and giving the LLM context can become, one of the biggest hurdles, because as they say, garbage in, garbage out, as an LLM is going through the investigation and even applying very, very robust skills through, your open source harnesses and things like that, results in a lot of inefficiencies via token usage and turns that the LLM takes. But then you also take a look at the inaccuracies and the hallucinations. And that's a term that was really popularized as we started to see, users doing very novel use cases with GPT on its launch. It would just tell you something exists when it doesn't exist. And by plugging in the Crogl harness and marrying that with the knowledge graph, we really don't worry about hallucinations in Crogl deployments, because the instruction set that we're sending is really succinct. It's deterministic, and it's telling the LLM, this is exactly what exists where, this is how it links to other areas that you may be querying, and you may be querying in regards to the LLM itself. And as you're driving each individual step of the investigation, that prevents the LLM from tripping itself up. And also trying to requery things and running individual workflows to try and just get to the determination of what data it's using. So that's kind of a little bit more about the knowledge graph and how we're using that. And we're seeing it work really, really well in production. As you get into these very, very large enterprises with many different tools, data sets, and, the inherited tech debt over the years of, buying a SIM and then buying a new SIM and migrating it, and then deciding maybe the SIM isn't for me. We're going into this era of SIM-less deployments where you have an elastic data lake with things running on top of it, or Databricks, whatever that might be, is a really powerful layer to introduce into that, to remove a lot of the friction of success. And that's something that we really work towards with Crogl and the deployment out of the gate, is that fast time to aha. As you deploy Crogl out, you really want to see your LLM accomplish something. The statistic is abhorrently high for how many LLM and AI-based deployment efforts in enterprises fail. And a lot of that can be addressed and solved immediately just via context and having some sort of a knowledge graph. So just want to take some time, elaborate a little bit on that. It's something we're really proud of at Crogl. And like I said, we're seeing a lot of success, and it makes my job much easier as we're going into deployments and figuring out, what we need to accomplish at SOCs. Because Drew, as you alluded to, SOCs are weird. Everybody's tried to solve the security conundrum in different ways. They've bought different tools. They have different environments. You have your Cisco shops, your Palo Alto shops. You've got, people that swear allegiance to Splunk. You've got people that swear allegiances to Microsoft Sentinel. And sometimes, that's inherited. As you acquire a company, your company might be in the business of acquisitions. You might just automatically get a drag and drop of tools that you've never used before. And having a knowledge graph to have the LLM be able to run all of those commands and kind of eliminate what we like to call the swivel chair query-based investigations eliminates just so much time and so much of the headache that I wish I had as a SOC operator, because that was the biggest pain in the rear, was going in and trying to figure out, am I writing in Splunk query language, or am I pivoting to do Elastic query language, or, we bought this new tool, how do I query this? And plugging it in immediately into Crogl, you're allowing the LLM to take a lot of that friction off, and, much less migraines, as I like to say.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly. It really is truly the heart and soul of Crogl. So Thank you for
Awesome.
that even better explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to expand on it. So I'm going to take over screen share here. We're going to
Yep.
hop in. I'm going to give you a tour of Crogl, show you what we've got, why we've got it. Shiny new coat of paint on the version I'm going to be showing today. So that's going to be a little bit different. If you've tuned into the previous live streams, we are in the 2.0 era of Crogl. So I'll be showing 2.1, 2.2. Let me go ahead and pull up that screen share here while I'm rambling on. And yeah, we'll just kick off. We'll do a full investigation, show you how it's working out here. Drew, if you could pivot there for me.
There you go.
Awesome.
You are
Perfect.
sharing.
Yeah, so here it is. This is one of the new dashboards we've introduced in the version 2 era of Crogl. I'm not going to talk too much on the differences between the version 1 era, version 2. We'll have some dedicated content coming out for the specifics of that as we're going through. So yeah, go ahead and look for that later in the future. But I'm just going to highlight some things as we kind of go through a tour here. New main dashboard, so you can see everything that's going on in the environment. You can see all of the sources you have connected up. I'm going to pivot over to a new instance that has much more sources than 6. You'll be able to see the large language model you're plugged in. And as Drew talked about, Crogl works with almost any LLM. It's a BYO LLM model. So if that's the frontier models, your Opuses, your GPTs, and then also as well, we've seen a lot of air gap success lately with Gemma. So you can run this completely isolated bare metal in an environment where it's only getting specific visibility to things in the data center itself or in highly secure environments with very controlled network connectivity. That is a feature that Crogl has and is very important to some enterprises that live in the realm of highly secure confidential information. As we flow down here, you can see the Crogl adoption. So you're looking at that ticketing queue as things are coming in, things that Crogl is analyzing versus what analysts are taking a look at, what Crogl could potentially take a look at. So you can see here, we have an environment where we've done, one of the 30 tickets that came in today with Crogl, successful analysis went off. And then also we're tracking some other things here too. Things that are very particular to Crogl that have been grouped for attack. Per se, as you can plug Crogl into the environment so you can see things that are still open. The one that we did earlier was completely closed out. Crogl found that it was a false positive within a couple minutes. And then you can start to track your journey with AI. And this could be really powerful for teams trying to bring some justification to the success of AI in the SOC. So you can see, what your analysts are doing from a manual perspective versus what you can do from an LLM perspective, bringing Crogl into the environment. And then at that point, I'm going to pivot over to this version of Crogl here. And we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a tour here. So you'll have your assistant channel, or your assistant tab rather. This is going to be your analyst workspace. This is the interface that almost everybody's familiar with if they've interacted with generative AI and templates. This is your chat window into everything that Crogl is hooked into. And with that, I will show you exactly what Crogl is hooked into. We have a very advanced threat lab here on the back and Bank of Mars. It's going to be emulating a financial institution. And we have a ton of tools. This fictional institution has gone through that acquisition phase where suddenly you're blessed with multiple EDR technologies, multiple network technologies, multiple data lakes, things like that to showcase how Crogl can really work across an entire environment in an investigation and then put that knowledge graph to work as you're looking at specific things. Also on this screen here, your model connection. This lab in particular, you might notice up here, this is localhost. This is running almost all in an air-gapped environment with the exception of being plugged into Opus. But if you wanted to change the model, you go into here and you can completely customize what the provider is going to be. So as Drew said, when we're working on those air-gapped, highly secure environments, you could be running via VLLM, Llama CPP, Light LLM. It's really flexible in what you can do. We say BYOLLM, but obviously we have our favorites and the ones that are the most effective in your environment. As we get into designing and planning with our customers, we figure out what use cases you want to bring to the table, what your infra might look like. Are you a AWS Bedrock shop? Are you a Google shop? We can be very, very flexible in working with your model and what you have approved from an AI governance perspective, which makes it much less friction to bring an AI tool in as as many of our customers are aware how fun the AI governance process is these days. And then, yeah, I'll go right in. We'll go ahead and prompt Crogl here, and we're going to take a look at a critical incident. And I'll probably just say we'll pull the latest CrowdStrike incidents. Okay, so Crogl is going to go ahead and take a look at its CrowdStrike connector. I'll kind of walk you through what it's going to be doing here from this perspective, and then also we'll pivot over to a completed investigation. So you'll see here, it's going to grab a skill out of the Crogl skills library, and I will take a pause here while we let this run and kind of talk about what skills are in the Crogl ecosystem. So you may have heard the term agent, you may have heard the term skill-based framework. Crogl is both. Each individual chat window here spins up its own isolated agent containers. This is a secure vertical for the workspace of the agent that's going to be performing the investigation from this perspective. It pulls everything from the skills library, and skills are a way for enterprises to customize what they want to do with Crogl. We have out-of-the-box skills available. By default, it's hunt and triage, but a lot of the security practitioners at Crogl have developed a very advanced library of skills that we share in the initial deployment phases. We're over 500 different skills from a whole bunch of different business use cases to reporting, legal chain of custody, and possible travel geo anomaly, you name it. We've gone after it to scale this into Crogl. And those live within here. This could be a CI/CD based deployment as you bring these in. And what they're going to be doing is telling Crogl from a deterministic perspective how to operate. So by default, I'll pull up our investigate alert. This is going to have a whole bunch of nested controls, code to run, everything that you might need from this perspective, and it maps back to MITRE. So we've taken the approach that everything should be grounded in truth in an LLM investigation. So as the LLM is going through every single phase, we pipe that to a highly auditable database to make sure you have the chain of thought available if you ever need to bring it up in an audit to prove that the LLM took a turn one way or another. And then also you can nest all of your enterprise tribal knowledge in here. So you'll see here from a lessons learned perspective, how Crogl can learn and adapt over time. You can come in and put in your tribal knowledge here. You'll have playbooks, references, schemas, scripts, anything you need to do to customize Crogl to your enterprise and the tool it might be hooking into. Because again, it might be a very common tool, like your SentinelOne, your Snowflake, your Splunks, your Taniums, or it might be something you develop custom in-house that you have just an API interface that your enterprise has developed, and Crogl needs to hook into that via custom connectors. That is supported as well. You can just provide the API documentation, MCP, gateway, whatever it is for Crogl to get that programmatic access and build the skill around that. I will pivot back here to see where we're at for the CrowdStrike critical incidents. So it looks like we have two that it pulled back. And I'm going to go ahead and kick off an investigation live so we can kind of walk through what Crogl is going to do. So I'll say investigate number 2 and call number 2 to complete the investigation. Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and we're going to run into an OS credential dumping via LSAS. So then Crogl is going to pull that skill. You'll see it kind of go through its first here. It's going to go ahead and grab the library, which is the investigate alert skill. And that's going to kick off the process from the grounded in truth MITRE mapping. So you'll see here, it's going to go ahead and behind the scenes, it's going to create an entire list of what that means to go through. So when you think of skills, as this is kind of running here, you can think of it as playbooks. Your enterprise, your company has developed a very robust framework in how you do work. So you've developed playbooks for your SIM or your SOAR. You've developed internal processes and procedures. All of these can be copy pasted into Crogl's skill builder to get you immediately out of the gate automated for the things Crogl can do. And while this is running too, I'll kind of take a pause on that point. Crogl can work in 2 different modes. What you see here is me working in what we like to call workbench mode. So this is allowing an analyst to free form go in and tell Crogl what to do from an instructional set perspective. But we also have the availability to automate things via jobs. So you can go in here, you can create an automated job on a schedule. you could tell Crogl to do a very specific thing on a very specific cadence. So if you want to, out of the gate, sick Crogl on your phishing alerts, you can define what a phishing alert is in the system Crogl is connected to. You can plug in your skill used for that. And then Crogl can turn automatically against those. So you can kind of eliminate the high friction point, low inspiration type jobs that SOC analysts are doing in the environment each day. Just wanted to call that out as we're kind of waiting for this to go through. And then we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at what we've done so far. So it's going to go ahead and pull exactly what that alert is. Crogl is going to grab that context, and then it's going to start to enumerate what the attributes in this incident are in regards to the knowledge graph. So you can see here it's grabbing account data, it's grabbing IP and network data. This is where then the knowledge graph is coming in to link that data as Crogl is going to be pivoting across the environment. So it's going to be able to plug in what IP means in the CrowdStrike sense versus what it might mean in the network tool sense as it's going to pivot across this. And then it's going to start to populate what the IOC is and what it actually needs to do. And you'll see it here with trust notes, so you can kind of follow its chain of thought every single way, every step of the way. And then you'll see as it's going through to do all of these different documentation reads from the skill itself. And now we're going to move to the output phase. So it's going to be doing the classification and scoping. You'll see it here doing vendor tags, detection groups, attack chain sketching. So like I said before, mapping to MITRE. So this is going to be the credential access attack chain item. And then it's going to go ahead and pull out a timeline. And as we go through this here, you'll also see Crogl call out where it doesn't have access to things and where it can't get data. This is a part of our recursive improvement loop that we built into the product. So as you're going through investigations, Crogl will call out where it doesn't have the availability to get information that would be very critical to that investigation. So then you can take the output of Crogl and then go in and tweak and tune your telemetry that you're collecting, whether that's an additional Windows endpoint event that you need to collect, or if that's a missing security tool on the endpoint. Like let's say you were supposed to have CrowdStrike on the endpoint, but it's reporting that you only have WinLogBeat sending telemetry data across. Crogl will call that out, and you can aggregate that and then begin to improve your security posture via that recursive loop. But then, yeah, it will go through. We'll just continue on. You'll see it mapped to every single tactic, whether or not that's unknown or if it needs to investigate in depth. There's a lot of text here, so bear with me as we kind of go through all of this. You can see its hypothesis and plan. So we have 3 different hypotheses that Crogl came up with, that it's either going to be authorized security testing, like an atomic red team, purple team exercise, or if this is legitimate admin activity, because this could be a marker of a false positive, or if it's truly a malicious attack, because this is a credential theft type IOC of a lol bin type incident as this goes through. It will roll through. Again, like I was saying earlier, highly auditable. This is also training your analysts as they go through. You can plug in an intern, a T1 analyst, and they can see exactly what code is being run in what system. So if they need a little refresher on what the Splunk query language might be, they can always take a look at what Crogl is running here. And you'll see Crogl's pivoting across multiple different systems here. And again, that eliminates the fatigue of having to log into Splunk, then log into CrowdStrike, then log into the data lake to start to pull some of these artifacts. These are activities that take analysts and take engineers getting artifacts if the analysts don't have access. These are all like 15-minute activities, and they stack up over time. And this is going to, drastically reduce your MTTR or your time to remediate or resolve whatever metric your organization might be tracking. This is a part of the power of what we're tracking via that first dashboard I showed you, because as an analyst is going through, if there is a needle in the haystack type attack that's going on in your environment, it can be very, very hard to dig into that. And by bringing in AI, you're operating at basically an inhuman scale. And as Drew kind of talked about earlier in the presentation, now anybody with some money and Claude credits, and we saw the release of Mythos and how that stirred up a lot of concerns in the industry, that now everybody has access to elite level red teaming tools with a budget of $100. This is going to allow you to scale your defense as the attackers are scaling their capabilities when they get access to these frontier LLMs. So then you'll see, pivot back in here. Crogl is going to execute the plan. And I'm just going to skip a little bit of this just for the sake of time in the demo. If you want to get a deep dive, please reach out via the community. Another plug for Drew. I know you'll appreciate that. But as well, if you ever want to connect with any of our engineers to go through and see exactly what Crogl can do in your environment, we can get Crogl plugged in very, very easily, and you can go through all of this. But the big call out here, massive finding. This is actually a Mac OS device, which, if anybody knows, EXEs don't run too well on Mac devices. So it's either going to be something from a strong signal or a poorly crafted signature match as it's going through here. And then it's going to actually try to dig in and find the actual process event of what this endpoint looks like, because there's data surrounding this alert in the environment that Crogl is able to pull via the knowledge graph to find other indicators of compromise that are lateral to this in the environment, which would be very, very difficult for an analyst to do on the fly very quickly, unless you're seasoned and tenured and know a lot of the tribal knowledge and inner workings of the company. So we'll go ahead and go down here. We see that there's a critical finding, 5 connections from this, and we'll just continue through with a kill chain expansion, pulling every single artifact of what happened. And then you'll start to see the timeline forming very, very clearly. And we've gotten to this within 5 minutes of Crogl running. So you already see here a complete timeline that's pulled out, the indicator of compromise and mapped to MITRE here. And then you'll see the stage of the attack chain. And then we'll continue. And you'll see Crogl's digging up, like I said, an inhuman level of artifacts as we go through here. And we will just go here. And then you'll kind of see Crogl put out its execution findings. So it refuted its authorized security testing. It refuted its legitimate admin activity. And it did find out that there was a malicious attack as simulated in our threat lab. This was a real malicious attack, so we do a lot of very advanced benchmarking internally at Crogl to make sure that it's doing what it should be doing and our due diligence from that perspective. And then you'll get a report. And what this is going to do, like I said, call out earlier log gaps and EDR telemetry. There was no Sysmon Defender Sentinel evidence because this endpoint wasn't in scope for those. Once this is complete, it'll pivot over to the last thing I didn't show you in the UI here, and this is the investigations pane. You can tell Crogl to pull finished workbench type items into formal investigations. And these can be very powerful because you can resume the context immediately without having to recall something in the destination system. So if you write this out to a ticketing system, you don't have to requery that ticketing system. It lives within the investigations pane here. So you can immediately pick up the context of what this is. And then it's also a much more human readable view. As you saw me scrolling through the wall of text, it's sometimes nicer to get a little bit of a user interface and some design around it. So within this investigation pane, you can see exactly what needs to happen from a more human consumable lens, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is a different one that I ran earlier today, but we have a recommendation contained. You'll see all of the artifacts here at a much easier to digest, basically view, if that makes sense. And Drew, that's a lot of what I have to show today. I think if we move into Q&A, I don't have access to the chat window, but do we have anybody in chat yet?
We do. We have a couple of questions. So the first question was, how can Crogl help me in a diverse environment when I don't always know what is in the tools from a GRC perspective?
Yeah, so when we take a look at Crogl, first we wanted to develop a tool for the SOC and the Cyber Fusion Center. But when you take a look at organizations' Cyber Fusion Centers, I think people forget the GRC elements is a really powerful engine that runs in the Cyber Fusion Center. It's kind of depending on how you set it up, but that's semantics at this point. But to answer the question exactly, and I'm just reading it down here again, when you take a look at diverse environments, and I'll go ahead and pull up this connector screen, you have the ability to add in tools that aren't formally like built into the product. So we have a pretty robust library of connectors that are built in to the product itself, but then we've taken a different approach in allowing our customers to build on top of Crogl at their own speed. I'm sure almost everybody who's worked with a vendor has gone into the stage of they request something and then it goes into a roadmap. And then it's like, is this going to come in a week? Is this going to come in 6 months? With Crogl and diverse environments, you can go in and add your own connector. So if you have, like I said, that in-house developed application that has an API, or if it's more modern MCP, you can go ahead and build that on the fly immediately and then give it a description and upload the documentation of what those API endpoints are. then Crogl will go ahead and it'll crawl that via the knowledge graph, which then will tell Crogl exactly what's in that data source and at those API endpoints. And that can allow you to really quickly add in things to the environment and then start to immediately ask questions via Crogl as to how you want to work with that data. So from a GRC perspective, if I were to take a step back, if that's writing audit reports, if that's doing table joins, from an access perspective and evidence gathering, all of this can be skilled. So if you have procedures that you've done, plug those into a skill, point it at the API endpoint, and see what Crogl can do. You'd be surprised.
All right, next question. How can Crogl help me automate reporting and code-based solutions to aggregation of audit reports?
Ooh, so when we take a look at that, you have the availability to nest your code that you've already written into the skill itself. So if I pivot over to skills here and we go into this ADCS skill, you have a definition here and you have the availability to put in code that Crogl will run in the skill itself. So if you have those solutions that you've built before, and let's say they're on an analyst's endpoint and they grab data, they're running it against a local Python script or any other coding language, you can load that into Crogl automatically, run the skill against it, and that's going to be the best way how you can have those code-based solutions if you want to solve that specific use case. It expands beyond that as well, but that's a great question.
I think that might be all the questions we have so far. Any other questions out there? I'm just double checking across all of our different lives. Yeah. I think that is all the questions we have for today.
Cool.
Any more? Going once, going twice?
And again, I will make another plug for the Crogl community. I know people have limited time available to tune into a live stream, so they might be watching it later. Feel free to hop into our community. We have all of the engineers available, everybody at Crogl. It's a great community where we're collaborating and really working towards solving actual use cases where we're actually putting AI to work for an output that's going to save people time. So hop in there. If you're catching this after the fact, happy to chat. Anything?
Yeah, you can find Alec there. You can find myself there. You can find other Crogl engineers hanging out there. So please go ahead and join the Crogl community. Otherwise, thank you all very much for your attention and your excellent questions. And we will see you at the next live stream. And if you're going to be at Black Hat, come see us at Black Hat. Both Alec and I will be at the booth during Black Hat. So come by Black Hat if you happen to be there.
Absolutely.
We'll love to talk to you more.
See you in busy Las Vegas.
That's right. Viva Las Vegas. All right.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.